Above the tree line, on the high slopes of the Swiss Alps, stretch meadows that are used only during the summer. This system is known as Alp. These are not permanent fields or decorative landscapes, but seasonal pastures accessed for a brief, carefully calculated period each year. From the Neolithic era until the major economic shifts of the 19th century, this model allowed for the occupation of high mountain territory without depleting it. It moved livestock out of the valleys during the warmer months and ensured sufficient reserves to get through the winter. Today, the system remains in use. Alpine meadows account for about a third of all cultivated land in Switzerland. Every summer, for approximately 100 days, some 7,000 alpine farms receive around 500,000 cows, cattle and calves. More than 17,000 people work at high altitudes during this period. During these months, the mountains are not just a backdrop, they are a fundamental aspect of their work. It defines the timelines and establishes what is possible. Living here isn't about adapting the environment to human routine, but about adjusting every decision to a space that allows no room for error. How do you live in villages where the place itself sets the rules and admits no exceptions? The mountain as a filter. Only those who endure remain. The mountain occupies the space with a solidity that commands attention from the very first moment. The altitude sets the rhythm of the surroundings and defines an immediate distance from everything below. The air becomes thinner, colder, more demanding. Each breath acquires its own weight. The body perceives the change without needing reference points. Here, adaptation begins before any movement. Silence acts as a constant layer. It is not emptiness, but a firm presence that envelops every slope and every valley. The wind crosses the terrain with irregular force, slips between the slopes, concentrates in certain places, and disappears in others. Its behavior changes without warning. The weather functions as an autonomous force that reorganizes the space at every moment. The slopes dominate the terrain. The ground rarely offers prolonged stability. The incline forces one to adjust their balance even at rest. The rock appears exposed, fragmented, marked by erosion. Every surface conveys hardness. Every change in elevation demands attention. The earth shows the traces of a constant pressure that never ceases. This constant demand of the terrain intensifies with the climatic conditions. The cold remains a constant. It concentrates in the shadows, accumulates in the low-lying areas, and intensifies with the wind. The temperature changes rapidly, reorganizing the space without transition. The sun appears irregularly, illuminating fragments of the terrain while leaving others shrouded in a persistent rigidity. The sky remains low, close, heavy. Clouds advance slowly, densely, altering visibility in a matter of minutes. The light transforms without continuity. A single point takes on different forms throughout the day. The perception of time becomes imprecise. The environment imposes its own rhythm. Colors remain restrained. Shades of gray, dark green, and damp brown dominate the landscape. Vegetation adapts to the terrain with compact, resilient, functional forms. It grows where pressure allows. Each plant seems to respond to a logic of permanence rather than expansion. The space conveys a clear sense of limit. Fatigue appears early. Muscles react to the constant slope. The body registers the effort even in stillness. The environment establishes conditions that are felt before they are understood. Here, resilience is measured by accumulation. The ground alternates between apparent solidity and hidden fragility. Moisture seeps beneath the surface. Rock fractures in unexpected places. Stability becomes a shifting variable. Every landform has immediate physical consequences. The wind interacts with the stone, generating irregular sounds, sharp thuds, prolonged slides, abrupt pauses. The landscape produces its own acoustic language. Each variation signals a change in the surrounding conditions. A sense of isolation settles in, regardless of distance. The space is perceived as separated from the rest of the world by an invisible boundary. The terrain operates under its own rules. The continuity of the landscape reinforces this separation. Everything seems to function within a closed system. Choosing a place to stand. Living in this place means accepting an unequal relationship from the outset. The terrain dictates the conditions, and life is organized accordingly. Human presence arises as a response, not an imposition. People don't come here to transform the environment. but to adapt to a predefined structure. Every settlement reflects this logic. Location, orientation, and form respond to clear physical limits. The mountain establishes the framework, and life fits within it. The choice to remain in this space is not explained by comfort or immediate opportunity. It is sustained by prolonged continuity. Families settle where the terrain allows, not where it is ideal. Altitude, slope, and exposure determine every initial decision. The settlement appears as a measured, calculated act, built from what is possible. It is not about occupying, but about fitting in. Access to the place conditions how it is inhabited. Distance not only separates, but also filters. Arrival requires planning and knowledge of the surroundings. This difficulty acts as a natural boundary that reduces constant movement. Life unfolds with an awareness of structural isolation. The mountain is not easily traversed, and this condition influences how permanence is built. The buildings reflect this adaptation. Their location responds to the need for protection from the slope and the weather. They are situated in places where the terrain offers relative stability. Each element fulfills a precise function. Living space is reduced to the essentials. Architecture emerges as an extension of the environment, not as a contrast. Everything is organized to withstand and endure. The relationship with the environment is based on accumulated observation. The orientation of the spaces responds to the path of the sun and protection from the wind. Decisions are not made randomly. They are based on previous experiences passed down through time. Adaptation is built slowly, adjusting every detail to the existing conditions. Living here means accepting that the environment always takes priority. The terrain limits expansion and defines the size of the settlements. Life is concentrated in specific areas where stability is sufficient. The available space is not expanded by human will. It is accepted as it is. This acceptance shapes a particular way of inhabiting, based on balance and restraint. Staying in this place also stems from a logic of continuity. The decision to remain is based on the relationship with the space, not on external expectations. The settlement becomes an extension of the territory. Each generation inherits not only a place, but a specific way of living within it. The mountain shapes this inheritance from the very beginning. The environment influences the distribution of habitable space. The proximity of buildings responds to the need for mutual protection from external conditions. The settlement is compact. Space is used precisely. There is no unnecessary sprawl. Each element occupies a defined place within a limited area. Adapting to the terrain also implies accepting clear constraints. Expansion becomes secondary to stability. Growth is adjusted to what the environment allows. The mountain establishes an invisible ceiling that regulates the density and form of the settlement. Life unfolds within this framework without attempting to transcend it. The settlement is not conceived as an open-ended project, but as a structure adjusted for the long term. Every modification is evaluated based on its impact on the overall equilibrium. The environment does not allow for abrupt changes. Adaptation is based on progressive, cumulative adjustments sustained over time. The decision to inhabit this place also implies accepting a direct relationship with isolation. Separation from the outside world influences how life is organized. The settlement is structured to function with relative autonomy. Dependence on external resources is reduced out of necessity. The environment conditions this self-sufficiency from the outset. The physical cost, earning a living. Work in this environment responds to a concrete need, sustaining life within a space that imposes constant limitations. Productive activity does not arise as a vocation or personal expression. It appears as a direct response to the terrain and climate conditions. Here, working means maintaining the minimum balance that allows survival. The mountains offer no broad alternatives. The scope for action is limited, and every effort is directed toward covering basic needs. Grazing is organized as a central activity because the terrain allows it. The slopes, the high-altitude meadows, and the seasonal availability of grass determine the type of production possible. The soil does not support extensive crops or rapid cycles. Grass becomes the primary resource, and livestock the means to transform it into sustenance. The entire production system is structured around this relationship. Work follows the rhythm of the seasons. In the warmer months, effort is concentrated on utilizing the high-altitude pastures. Activity intensifies during the brief windows of opportunity when the climate allows grass to grow. Each day is extended to cover what is necessary before conditions change. Time is limited and cannot be recovered. The mountain dictates the schedule with precision. Hay harvesting occupies a key place within this system. Cutting, drying, and storage require coordination with the weather and the terrain. The slope necessitates manual labor in many sections. Physical exertion accumulates quickly. Every movement involves carrying, dragging, or securing the material on uneven surfaces. Mistakes have immediate consequences. Productivity depends on constant attention. Hay is not a surplus. It serves as an indispensable reserve for periods when the land ceases to produce. The amount harvested determines the capacity to sustain activity during the colder months. The work done in one season directly impacts survival in the next. There is no room for improvisation. Calculations are based on accumulated experience and observation of the surroundings. Grazing demands continuous movement. The livestock move according to the availability of food. Routes are adapted to the slope and the terrain's exposure. The daily route is determined by practical criteria: access to pasture, terrain safety, and distance covered. The goal is not optimization, but maintaining a balance between effort and result. Physical work is distributed consistently throughout the day. There are no brief bursts of activity followed by long periods of rest. The workload remains steady. Each task flows into the next. The body is the primary tool. Fatigue is managed through repetition and adaptation, not through prolonged breaks. The weather directly impacts work organization. Rain can interrupt an entire day. Wind disrupts hay drying. A sudden drop in temperature reduces pasture availability. Every change necessitates readjusting the daily plan. The mountain introduces changes without warning, and the work is reorganized accordingly. Survival depends on continuous effort. There are no extraordinary productivity peaks to compensate for periods of inactivity. The system is sustained by daily accumulation. Each day contributes a necessary fraction to maintain the whole. Prolonged interruptions jeopardize the entire balance. Work is inseparable from the landscape. It takes place in an environment that demands constant attention. The uneven terrain dictates the pace. The slope forces precise weight distribution. Movement requires constant calculation. Physical effort adapts to these conditions, leaving no room for carelessness. Livestock as a reference point, daily balance. The animal's presence structures space without the need for words. It doesn't passively occupy the space. It defines routes, imposes rhythms, and establishes priorities. Its body introduces a different scale within the environment. Every movement modifies the immediate equilibrium of the shared space. The relationship is built from this constant coexistence, where both adjust their behavior to the presence of the other. Dependence is not expressed as visible subordination. It functions as a system of silent correspondences. The animal responds to minimal signals. The human body learns to interpret these responses without verbal mediation. The bond is sustained through continuous observation. There are no unnecessary gestures. Every exchange fulfills a precise function within a shared framework. Rhythms align progressively. The animal's movement marks times that are neither accelerated nor forced. The pause arises when the body indicates it. Progress resumes when the environment allows. Synchronization occurs through repetition, not explicit instruction. The relationship is refined over time until it becomes almost automatic. The animal introduces a form of stability within a changing environment. Its constant presence acts as a reference point. The human body adjusts its attention to this reference. Vigilance is not experienced as permanent tension, but as a continuous state of gentle alertness. Space is read through the animal's behavior. Every change in its posture, movement, or breathing signals a variation in external conditions. Communication unfolds outside of spoken language. It is based on proximity, gaze direction, and body pressure. the response arises without delay. There is no room for prolonged ambiguity. The relationship demands clarity in every interaction. Learning is built upon minimal errors corrected immediately. The cow does not occupy the place of an object within the environment. It integrates itself as an active element that conditions the use of space. Its size, weight, and need for movement influence how slopes are traversed and meadows are used. The terrain is experienced differently when shared with another body that imposes its own logic. Silence accompanies this relationship. It is not about the absence of sound, but rather a strict economy of stimuli. Noises are reduced to the bare minimum. Every sound acquires significance. The body's friction against the ground, deep breathing, the slow movement of limbs create an atmosphere where everything is perceived with greater precision. The shared rhythm is not the result of conscious planning. It forms from daily repetition and mutual adaptation. The human body learns to anticipate certain movements of the animal. The animal, in turn, recognizes stable patterns in human behavior. This predictability reduces friction and allows for sustained coexistence. The animal's presence introduces a different temporal dimension. Time ceases to be organized into abstract units and adjusts to organic cycles. Attention is directed toward continuous processes rather than specific moments. The relationship unfolds within this extended temporality where changes are gradual and cumulative. Mutual dependence manifests itself in the way both bodies orient themselves within space. Movement becomes a shared action. Direction is not imposed unilaterally. It is negotiated through constant micro-adjustments. Equilibrium is maintained through almost imperceptible corrections. The animal provides a stable presence that reduces distraction. Its behavior introduces structure into the environment. The human body relies on this structure to organize its attention. The relationship is not based on visible dominance but on sustained coordination. Each part fulfills its function within a system maintained by equilibrium. The non-negotiable routine repetition organizes life without explanation. It doesn't present itself as a conscious choice or a deliberately acquired habit. It settles in over time and remains. The day unfolds following an order that doesn't need to be remembered. Each gesture finds its place within a familiar sequence. The rhythm remains steady even when external conditions change. Continuity doesn't rely on novelty. It's built on the reiteration of simple, precise, contained movements. The body recognizes this order before it's even thought about. Attention is focused on maintaining the uninterrupted flow. The day progresses through smooth transitions between moments that link together seamlessly. There are no abrupt breaks. Everything follows a sustained cadence. Inherited gestures traverse time without visible modifications. They are repeated in the same way because they work. They are neither reviewed nor questioned. Transmission occurs through prolonged observation. The body learns by watching, accompanying, and repeating. Precision arises from this silent accumulation. Routine becomes a shared language that needs no words. The daily rhythm is established by internal reference. It doesn't depend on clocks or constant external signals. The body recognizes when to move forward and when to stop. The alternation between activity and pause is maintained within narrow margins. Regularity reduces the need to make decisions. The day is sustained by controlled inertia. The stability that routine produces doesn't imply immobility. There are small, almost imperceptible adjustments that allow for maintaining overall equilibrium. The sequence adapts without losing its form. Order is preserved even when the environment introduces variations. Repetition acts as a containing structure. Routine defines a particular form of attention. Concentration is distributed evenly. There are no prolonged peaks of intensity or long periods of disconnection. The mind follows the body's rhythm. The predictability of the day reduces distraction. Each gesture finds its meaning within the whole. Continuity generates a sense of permanence that isn't based on future expectations. The value lies in the repetition itself. The day isn't evaluated by visible results, but by its internal coherence. Routine sustains life through regularity, not through variation. The body adapts to this rhythm and incorporates it as a basic reference point. Muscle memory retains the sequence of gestures. Attention is freed from constant decisions. The day unfolds with a precise economy of movement. Each action is executed with just the right intensity. The routine also defines time. Days are distinguished from one another by minimal nuances. Repetition does not generate monotony, but rather stability. The passage of days reinforces continuity. Identity is built upon this permanence. Gestures do not seek symbolic meaning. They fulfill a function within the daily flow. Their value lies in constancy. Repetition consolidates a way of being in the environment that does not depend on external variations. The day is sustained by fidelity to this sequence. The daily rhythm acts as a framework. Within it, everything finds its place. Predictability reduces the margin of error. The body moves with confidence within a known order. Routine becomes a form of protection against uncertainty. Continuity is reinforced with the passage of time. Each day reproduces the previous one with minimal adjustments. This prolonged repetition builds an identity that isn't declared, it's practiced. The routine isn't displayed, it's maintained. The day begins and ends following a stable logic. The transition between moments occurs without tension. The regularity of the daily rhythm generates a sense of sustained equilibrium. Life is organized within this framework without needing to be redefined. Deciding to stay. A long-term calculation. Staying in this place is never a matter of inertia. Each generation faces the same question, posed practically and without drama. Staying, leaving, or returning are not presented as emotional dilemmas, but as decisions made based on concrete conditions. The environment establishes clear boundaries, and life is organized within them. From there, each choice is evaluated using criteria accumulated over time. Migration appears as a recurring possibility. It doesn't arise from an abrupt break, but from a gradual evaluation. Leaving responds to measurable factors: access to resources, projected stability, and the ability to sustain life within the existing framework. The decision is built upon practical comparisons. The outside world is considered a functional alternative, not an abstract promise. Family continuity introduces a central element into this calculation. Staying implies assuming an inherited responsibility. The place is not received merely as a physical space, but as a structure that must be kept operational. Transmission is based not on rhetoric, but on actions. Staying is justified when equilibrium can be maintained without disrupting the continuity of the whole. Leaving does not represent a definitive abandonment. It is conceived as a reversible option. Leaving allows one to acquire resources, knowledge, or stability that can later be reintegrated into the place of origin. Returning is evaluated under the same logic as leaving. It does not occur impulsively, but rather when conditions allow for the re-establishment of equilibrium within the existing framework. The choice to stay is based on long-term viability. The environment does not allow for prolonged improvisation. Staying is sustained when material conditions allow the system to be maintained without excessive burdens. The decision is reviewed periodically. It is not fixed as an irreversible mandate. Mobility is part of the overall functioning. Not everyone stays, nor does everyone leave. The system adjusts to these movements without losing its basic structure. Continuity does not depend on absolute immobility, but on the capacity to integrate departures and returns without altering the overall equilibrium. The decision to return is evaluated with the same precision as the decision to leave. The place imposes conditions that are not negotiable. Returning is only considered viable when there is a real capacity for adaptation. Staying requires accepting the limits imposed by the environment. Returning occurs when such adjustment becomes possible. Younger generations incorporate these decisions as a natural part of the life cycle. Evaluation is not experienced as an exception. It is integrated into a shared logic that prioritizes the stability of the whole. Each choice is measured by its impact on overall continuity. Prolonged stay is not interpreted as symbolic resistance. It is sustained as a functional option. The place remains habitable as long as individual decisions align with the structural conditions. Leaving and returning operate as adjustment mechanisms within that system. Equilibrium is preserved through phased decisions. Partial migration allows for the relief of internal tensions. Selective return reinforces continuity when conditions permit. The system absorbs these movements without needing to redefine itself. Rational choice dominates this process. Decisions are made considering the actual scope of action. The environment does not adapt to individual will. Life is organized within existing limits. Staying implies accepting that framework. Leaving implies seeking compatible alternatives. Returning implies confirming that equilibrium can be restored. Here, vital decisions are not expressed as personal narratives. They manifest as functional adjustments within a system that remains operational over time. Continuity depends on this ability to evaluate, decide, and readjust without breaking the overall structure. Prolonged silence. Physical and mental impact. Isolation sets in gradually. It doesn't appear as an immediate rupture, but as a condition that accumulates over time. Silence stretches for hours on end and ceases to be perceived as background noise. It becomes an active presence that accompanies every movement and every pause. The absence of constant stimuli reorganizes attention. The mind narrows its scope and focuses on the immediate. Winter intensifies this experience. The days shorten and living space shrinks. The outdoors becomes inaccessible for long periods. Contact with the environment becomes more limited and more demanding. Prolonged confinement within the same space alters the perception of time. Days follow one another with minimal differences. The passage of days is measured by subtle changes in light and temperature. The body feels the effects of this progressive confinement. Energy is distributed more carefully. Fatigue doesn't manifest as momentary exhaustion, but as accumulated wear and tear. Muscles respond with stiffness. Joints register the persistent cold. Movement becomes more restrained. Every step requires preparation and adjustment. The mind faces an environment that offers few external variations. The repetition of stimuli limits distraction. Thoughts are ordered in closed cycles. Attention is directed toward one's own body and the immediate space. Introspection is not sought, it happens. Isolation reduces distractions and exposes mental processes directly. Prolonged silence amplifies internal perception. Minimal sounds acquire relevance. The rustle of clothing, breathing, the creaking of the floorboards are perceived with clarity. The absence of external noise leaves space for constant listening to one's own body. The mind adjusts to this reduced sensory intensity. Winter also modifies the body's rhythm. Rest lengthens. Wakefulness is fragmented. The body adapts its cycles to the scarcity of light. Mental activity becomes slower, more concentrated. Time seems to expand within a limited framework. Waiting is integrated as part of the day. Isolation does not offer automatic comfort. The lack of stimuli demands conscious management of attention. The mind faces periods of prolonged stillness. The ability to sustain that stillness becomes central. The environment offers no distractions or compensations. The experience is lived directly. The body learns to register early signs of fatigue. The constant cold reduces tolerance for exertion. Recovery slows down. Tiredness accumulates silently. Energy management becomes a permanent task. Isolation forces one to measure every movement and every pause. The perception of time is gradually altered. Days are strung together without clear milestones. Recent memory is compressed. Events lose defined contours. The mind adapts to this diffuse continuity by adjusting its focus to the immediate present. Isolation modifies the way we remember and anticipate. The prolonged winter intensifies the relationship between body and environment. Limited exposure to the outdoors reinforces the feeling of physical confinement. Space feels smaller. The mind responds by concentrating on internal regulatory routines. The experience becomes more introspective without seeking it. Silence acts as a mirror. The absence of external stimuli reveals internal states that go unnoticed in other contexts. The mind confronts its own rhythms without interference. The ability to sustain this internal exposure becomes part of the experience of isolation. Beauty without consolation. The place remains. The beauty of the place presents itself with a firmness that seeks no compensation. It is there as a stable, visible, persistent condition. It does not soften the experience nor lighten the accumulated weight. It maintains a constant intensity that permeates the space without adapting to the observer. Its presence is imposed by continuity, not by immediate impact. The forms of the surroundings maintain a coherence that does not change with the passage of time. The lines are repeated, the volumes remain. The general arrangement of the space remains intact. Each element occupies its place within a structure that is not rearranged to facilitate perception. Beauty arises from this prolonged stability. The place does not respond to external expectations. Its appearance does not vary to offer relief. The perceived harmony coexists with constant demands. Beauty is integrated into the overall functioning of the environment. It does not appear as a reward or consolation. It is sustained as part of the same system that imposes limits. Continuity reinforces this impression. Day after day, the space retains its character. Changes occur within narrow margins. Variation exists, but it does not alter the central structure. Beauty manifests itself in permanence, in resistance to rapid transformation. The place retains its form even when conditions change. Prolonged observation reveals a beauty that is not immediately given. It requires time, sustained attention, and adaptation to an unfamiliar rhythm. It does not produce instant gratification. It is perceived gradually through repetition. Its impact is not measured by intense emotion, but by constant presence. The environment maintains a clear distance. It neither approaches nor retreats. Beauty is displayed without the intention of pleasing. Its effect depends on the ability to hold the gaze. The place does not respond to the search for meaning. It remains the same, independent of external interpretations. The continuity of the space reinforces a sense of stability that does not lead to comfort. Beauty coexists with demandingness. Both are part of the same balance. The place retains its character without visible adjustments. Observation occurs within this fixed framework. Perception is refined over time. Details acquire greater clarity. Minimal variations become perceptible. Beauty manifests itself in this prolonged attention. It doesn't appear as a contrast, but as a constant background. The place doesn't change to highlight its appearance. The environment maintains its form without needing validation. Beauty is sustained by repetition and internal coherence. Each element reinforces the other. The overall structure remains stable. Observation remains open, without resolution. Here, beauty offers neither relief nor closure. It presents itself as part of an uninterrupted continuity. The place retains its character. The gaze remains. The space is still there, unchanged, sustained by its own logic, without promises and without resolution. When the season changes, the space closes in again. The meadows disappear under the snow, the paths are interrupted, and life retreats inward. Work doesn't stop. It only modifies its form. Attention is focused on maintaining what already exists: stored food, sheltered animals, enough warmth to get through the still months. Time becomes slower, denser, marked by repeated gestures in a confined space. The outside world remains present even from within. The cold seeps into the wood. The silence thickens. The mountain continues to impose its rhythm without needing to reveal itself. Continuity doesn't depend on constant movement, but on the capacity to sustain what is essential when everything else diminishes. Each day is organized to maintain balance, not to advance. Thus, life in these high-altitude villages is not defined by the spectacular nature of the landscape, nor by the isolated hardship of the work, but by persistence. To remain means to go through complete cycles, to accept the repetition of the seasons, and to adapt life to an environment that offers no concessions. There is no final closure, only continuity. The places are still there. So is life.